The Crucible by Arthur Miller. Summary of Act 1. When Act 1 begins, Reverend Paris kneels by the bed of his daughter Betty, who is in a comatose state. He pleads with God to awaken her. Abigail William, a 17-year-old girl, Paris took into his home when her parents were killed by Indians, enters with news from Susanna Walcott, Dr. Grigg's messenger. Susanna says the doctor has found no explanation not mesh with their religion, since they fear being excommunicated for any unorthodox opinions or being perceived as a devil's disciple. The townspeople accept Paris' dictates without question. Many of them also fear the nearby wood because the Indian living there are responsible for many relatives' death. These two fears combined with Paris' discovery of the girls and Tituba's activities create a sort of perfect storm for a witch hunt. Because of Betty, Paris and Ruth Putnam's comatose and sleepwalking states, the girl latch on to sorcery as a cause of their condition to avoid being whipped and publicly humiliated for disobeying the theocracy laws. Knowing confusion feeds on suspicion and produces turmoil, Reverend Paris acts to protect his position of power within the community, which is threatened by his daughter's participation in the night's event. By interrogating and threatening Tituba, Abigail, and the other girls, his harsh intimidation triggers group hysteria, attracting those who are jealous of their neighbors' higher social standing, contended lives, or economic situations.
The accusation of practicing witchcraft offers these people an opportunity to appease the dissatisfaction with their own lives. For example, Thomas Putnam, a wealthy man who desires the land of his neighbors, welcomes the hysteria. Although he doesn't adopt the mob mentality, he manipulates it to serve his own ends, since any man convicted to witchcraft loses his land. Putnam has long coveted the land belonging to Gilles Curry, Francis Nurse and John Proctor, so he schemes to ruin them. His wife, Anne, bitter over the death of 7 of her babies, envies Rebecca Nurse's thriving adult offspring. Her insinuations about why Rebecca's children lived when hers didn't sow seeds of doubt in people's mind. In this way, the Salem witch hunt becomes a toppling series of curses and effects driven, for the most part, by the selfish motivation of the citizens. The other girls leave when Proctor enters Betty's room. Proctor demonstrates his integrity and principled stance when he publicly refutes the acceptance of unproven witchcraft over logic. His honest tincture has earned him the respect of many of the townspeople, and this antagonizes both Putnam and Paris, who don't enjoy the same respect. Putnam doesn't believe the fears of witchcraft but understands its usefulness. He intends to use any law supporting his plan to confiscate the land of those men who are hanged for practicing witchcraft. Proctor knows unfounded rumors feed people's fears. This is why he insists Paris condemn any baseless allegation from the pulpit. Proctor's strength of the character keeps him from comprehending how his scene of horror causes Putnam and Paris to feel inferior. This makes him the perfect scapegoat for their resentment. Proctor chooses to separate himself from the growing group of witchcraft rabble-rousers and loudly professes his resistance to the mob mentality infecting the minds and hearts of the villagers. Paris' unwillingness to even hear another person's spiritual perceptions show he is banner bearer for the theocratic injustice theme. The main conflicts of the play, person against person, is apparent already. Reverend John Hale, a young minister from Beverly, Massachusetts, and a renowned witchcraft expert enter the room. He greets the people, appreciates their warmth toward him, and inquires about the children's conditions and the happening in Salem. Gilles Curry innocently mentioned he can't understand why his wife loves reading so much, and this concerns him. Anne Putnam relates her suspicion and upset with the insinuations about witchcraft. Rebecca nurse leaves. Abigail breaks down when interrogated about the previous night and claims Tituba called up the devil and sends her spirit into her during church services. Tituba denies these allegations, but Thomas Putnam demands she be hanged. Fearing for her life and caught up in the history of the moment, Tituba offers the name of villagers she thinks are witches.
Hearing her, Abigail and Betty also list a group of men and women they have seen with the devil. In Act 2, John Proctor returns from seeding the fields for the summer crop and is pleased to hear his wife, Elizabeth, singing their three boys to sleep. By the time he has washed his hands, Elizabeth is ladling up some stew for him. They talked about safe topic, whether John likes the rabbits too, his plan to buy her a milk cow, if the crop is good and how she should decorate the house with flowers. He thinks nevertheless that she is depressed again and tries to put her concerns about Abigail to rest by explaining, "I have no business in Salem." Elizabeth avoids a discussion about the affair by mentioning that Mary Warren is an official of the court. Elizabeth explained that the court now has 4 judges with the deputy governor of Massachusetts as the head of the panel and that 14 people have been arrested and charged with practicing witchcraft. She explains the deputy governor vows to hang all those who found guilty who do not confess and adds that Abigail is the star of the proceeding. All it takes to convict a defendant, she says, is for Abigail to scream in fear and fall to the floor, while the other girls imitate her. When they do, the judges deem the teenagers bewitched and sentence the accused to death. She begs John to tell Ezekiel Shearer, the clerk of the court, that Abigail admitted the girls' dancing had nothing to do with witchcraft. Elizabeth is hurt. Her husband didn't tell her he had talked with his former mistress publicly. He is furious that she still doesn't trust him and notices decency and kindness instead. Mary Warren shuffles into the house announcing, "I am sick, I am sick." She insinuates that her condition is due to the trials she attended all day. She gives Mrs. Proctor a puppet, a rag doll she made while entering the hours in court, and informs them 39 women have been arrested for practicing witchcraft. Mary explains Goody Osborne tried to choke her during the trial and the old homeless woman could not recite the 10 commandments when the judge commanded her to. As a result, he sentenced her to hang. When Proctor orders her not to attend court anymore and will whip her if she disobeys, Mary announces Elizabeth Proctor was accused of being a witch at court. Elizabeth pleads with John not just to tell Shiva what Abigail admitted to him at Paris's home, but to tell Abigail he will never leave Elizabeth and will ruin her name and reputation if she doesn't retract her charge against Elizabeth. Once again, they fight because she thinks John is still attracted to the girl and wants to be free of her so he can marry Abigail. Reverend Hale spends his evening visiting the house of those who have been accused of practicing witchcraft to assess the strength of their Christian belief. He asks Proctor why he has attended church so rarely in the past years and a half and why his younger son is not yet baptized. Proctor explains he feels Reverend Parris is not a godly man but materialistic. Because of this, he says he does not respect the church spokesperson. He tells Hale his wife was sick over the winter, so he chose to take care of her and the children when she needed him instead of attending church. On those Sundays, he prayed at home and read his Bible. Hale asked the couple whether they know the 10 Commandments. Elizabeth claims she is a covenanted Christian woman, so Hale asks her husband to repeat the 10 tenets of their religion. Proctor does but forget the commandment regarding adultery until his wife reminds him. Although Proctor avows they are devout Christian, his wife still feels Hale is not fully convinced, even though the minister says he leaves judgment to the godly wisdom of the court. Elizabeth begs John to tell Hale about Abigail. At first, Hale doesn't believe Proctor's story because a number of women have confessed to witchcraft. Proctor reminds him there are them that will swear to anything before they'll hang. This embraces Hale, as does Proctor's belief in the Bible and his conviction that if it says witches exist, he must accept it. Elizabeth says, "If you think that I am one, then I say there are none," and demands he questions Abigail about her belief in the gospel.
Gilles Corey and Francis Nurse enters the room and say their wives have been arrested. Martha Corey for her reading habits and Rebecca Nurse for the supernatural murder of Goody Putnam's babies. Hale is shocked but tells everyone they must rely on the justice of the court. Ezekiel Cheever and Marshall Herrick come to arrest Elizabeth. Their evidence of her witchcraft is a puppet Mary gave her and the needle stuck in its stomach. During dinner with the Parises, Abigail fell to the floor screaming with a needle protruding from her stomach. The men won't listen to Mary, who explained she made the doll out of boredom during court and stuck the needle in it so she wouldn't lose it. Hale admits Abigail charges Elizabeth with witchcraft and Elizabeth curses the vengeful girl. John rips the arrest warrant and asks, "Is the accuser always holy enough?" After his wife is taken away, John insists Mary tell the court the truth about the girls. Fainting and Abigail's conniving control of the events. Mary says she cannot do this because Abigail terrifies her. In Act 3, Judge Hawthorne is heard interrogating Martha Corey. Her husband, Gilles, yells that the lies are tainting the testimony so Thomas Putnam can seize the forms of those convicted and hanged. He is sent from the courtroom and is joined by his neighbor, Francis Nurse, whose wife was accused during the morning trial. In the adjacent room, Judge Hawthorne, Deputy Governor Danforth and the Reverend Hale and Paris join them. Corey and Nurse demand to share their evidence, but Danforth tells them to write down their information and enter it as a legal plea for the court to consider. John Proctor comes in with Mary Warren, who wants to confess the girl's testimony has been a complete fraud and that Abigail swore them to secrecy about the dancing in the woods. Her scheme included diverting attention away from them by blaming Adele for practicing witchcraft, who then retaliated by putting spells on them. Danforth remains them of the 72 people he has already convicted in the Massachusetts province and assures them the court will dig out any concealment of or falsehood. Still worried about his tenuous place in the town's hierarchy, Paris criticizes anybody he fears will discredit him, especially Corey and Proctor, who hold power because of their integrity. Throughout this scene, Paris repeatedly accuses Proctor of trying to overthrow the court. When Danforth asks him if Mary's evidence is the truth, Proctor adamantly responds, "It is, and you will surely know it." Thomas Putnam and Abigail see that John Proctor, Francis Nurse, and Gilles Corey's integrity, along with the testimony of Mary Warren, whose name they had used to their advantage, might indict them for the fraud they perpetrated. They know just how to sow the seeds of doubt. Paris continues to pound at Proctor's Christianity by questioning his belief. His plot fails to work to his advantage because Proctor always proves his point and reveals his understanding of Christian tenets with an appropriate biblical verse. Paris used the guilty until proven innocent card and accuses anyone with evidence against what has been decided during the trial of trying to overthrow the court. He proves that townspeople are satisfied with the trial when he claims all innocent and Christian people are happy for the court in Salem. Deputy Governor Danforth also refuses to accept the deposition of Proctor's nurse and Corey that show attestation from the townspeople regarding their wives' innocence. The girls' fraudulent play acting and Putnam's greed for land, he will accept only the names of the people who signed the deposition as proof of the veracity of the statement in the writs. Sadly, the only proof necessary to convict those accused of practicing witchcraft is the girl's dramatic action stemming from Abigail's wish to save herself from being condemned for dancing in the wood. Because the judges consider the girls as unsophisticated and chaste children, they already have predetermined opinion. The children are innocent until proven guilty and have never shown any reason they should be suspected of deceit. Danforth questioned Mary about her Christianity quite harshly but believes she is telling the truth. He doesn't allow Corey Nurse or Proctor the same tolerance and respect but demands they give the court the name of the people who signed their affidavits. The men refuse because they know their names alone speak for the woman and against the girl's action, and Putnam will make these people suspect in the minds of the judges. Hale tries to make Danforth understand that the people greatly fear for the guilt of association or are connected to the hearing, Danforth doesn't listen, continuing to stand on the justice of the proceeding. He doesn't even accept Proctor's confession regarding his affair with Abigail, nor realize his honesty when he condemns a man will not cast away his good name. Instead, Danforth casts doubt on Proctor's words and causes him more shame by demanding Elizabeth's response to her husband's confession.
Shiva tells Danforth that Proctor ripped up Elizabeth's arrest warrant, but John defends his action by explaining he was shocked and frantic when his godly wife was arrested. Danforth and Paris then interrogate Proctor about the depth of Elizabeth's and his religious beliefs, as well as his wife's honesty. Proctor swears his wife would never lie. Proctor gives Danforth a deposition signed by 91 townspeople who assert Martha Corey, Rebecca Knowles, and his wife Elizabeth have been upstanding Christian women and have never shown any hint of working with the devil. Corey then has Proctor give Danforth his deposition accusing Thomas Putnam of coercing his daughter to claim that George Jacob is a wizard, so Putnam can confiscate Jacob's land after the man is hanged. This would be the murder of an innocent man. Neither Proctor nor Corey will give Danforth the name of the people who provided the evidence in confidence. Corey is charged with contempt of court. In order to prove that vengeance and greed for land have motivated the witch hunt, Proctor gives Danforth Mary's deposition naming Abigail is the ringleader of the conspiracy. Mary declares the information is the truth, but when Abigail comes in, she calls Mary a liar. Her standing in the court hall small cloud. She starts another bit of play acting, insinuating witchcraft surrounds them, and Mary falls in fear of Abigail's threatening power. Proctor can see all those who protest the proceedings will be disbarred. So to save them and to destroy Abigail's hold on the court, he admits his affair with her. Remembering Proctor's avowal of his wife's honesty, Danforth has Elizabeth brought in to give evidence regarding her husband's adultery. She denies his luxury and John yells he has told them about the affair. Abigail uses the moment to begin yet another fraudulent hallucination. This ends with Mary's contempt Proctor by accusing him of saying he will murder her if Elizabeth is hanged. Proctor and Corey are arrested and taken to jail, and Reverend Hale denounces the witch hunt and trials.
In Act 4, Marshal Herrick is moving Sarah Good and Tituba to another cell. Reverend Hale is also there, but without Danforth's blessing, since he denounced the court at their encounter a few months earlier. Judge Hawthorne wants Hale questioned about any part he might have played in the Andover Rebellion that ended the court's reign in their town. Danforth does not want Andover mentioned at all, fearing any talk about the town will cause the Salem citizen to rebel. Reverend Paris has appeared rather unstable lately, but Ezekiel Shiva blames the preacher's condition on all of the cows wandering through the town because people are fighting over their ownership. When Paris enters the room, he confesses Abigail, William, and Mercy Lewis have run away and have stolen all his money. Betty Paris confessed she had heard them talking about taking a ship away from the province. He thinks they are scared to stay in Salem because of their part in the witch hunt. He insinuates that they know about the Andover Rebellion and have heard talk from Salem townspeople who are upset at the unwarranted execution and fear for their life. Paris fears a riot will erupt in Salem if John Proctor, Rebecca Knowles, and Martha Corey are hanged because they are still well respected for their high principle. He wants to postpone the hangings, and Hale wants the three villages pardoned. Danforth refuses to heed either suggestions because they will make him look weak. He plans to continue with the day's execution. Danforth has John and Elizabeth Proctor brought into the room, believing she will convince her husband to confess to the charge of witchcraft, thereby saving his life. The Proctor's meeting after 3 months is filled with both joy and sorrows. John asks Elizabeth what he should do, but she insists he is the only one who can make his decisions. She tells him Gilles Corey was pressed to death with huge stone because he would not admit nor deny any guilt. Knowing he would save his land for his family if he wasn't hanged, neither Martha Corey nor Rebecca Knowles will lie to save their lives. John feels he is not good like the women are because he is stained in the eyes of God and his wife because of his affair. She attends to believing he is a good man no matter his choice, and her forgiveness meaning nothing if he won't forgive himself. She confesses her part in not being a loving wife and begs for his mercy because she never appreciated his viciousness. John announces he will confess, and everyone rushes to make it final and save him. Rebecca still refuses to do so because it would be a lie. How may I damn myself? I cannot, she says. Proctor denies ever seeing any of the accused or any person with the devil because he will not ruin their names and can speak only to his sense. After much arguing, he signs his confession but will not give it to them to hang in the town. He tears up his confession, finally understanding he is worthy of an honorable death instead of living a lie. He walks to the gallows along with Rebecca Nurse.